Okay, be honest for a second. Have you ever felt that sinking, totally universal stress of living paycheck to paycheck? You know, that feeling where you get to the end of the month and literally wonder, where on earth did it all go? Well, if so, you are definitely not alone. So we really have to ask ourselves, is your money managing you, or are you actually managing your money? It's a pretty provocative question, right? Because for so many of us, it just feels like our cash flow is completely out of our control.
Well, welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're going to figure out exactly how to take back control of our finances. We've pulled together some incredible expert insights from Lloyd's Bank, Skills You Need, and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and we've pieced them into a highly actionable, step-by-step personal finance playbook. So let's dive right into this. Here is our game plan for today. 1. What is financial literacy? 2. The 50-30-20 rule. 3. Needs, wants, and savings. 4. Building your emergency fund. And finally, 5. Smart strategies to save. All right, Section 1. What is financial literacy? Building the foundation. You know, before we even look at the math or the budgets, we absolutely have to build a solid mental foundation. And what really surprised me about how the experts at Skills You Need define financial literacy is that it's actually not just about being good at math. Not at all. It's having the knowledge of financial matters, things like budgeting, investing, banking, so that you can actually take appropriate action. It is essentially the ultimate tool for achieving a financially balanced and responsible lifestyle. Really, it's the main difference between just crossing your fingers and hoping things work out and actively directing your own future. Former U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Alan Greenspan actually summed up perfectly just how critical this is. He said, "The lack of financial literacy is the #1 problem in today's economy." And when you think about it, mastering things like your credit score, really understanding how loans work, and anticipating financial risks, that can literally change your ability to earn a livelihood. It completely shifts your entire attitude toward money. Moving on to Section 2, the 50-30-20 rule, your core budgeting framework. Now, if you have ever been totally overwhelmed by those complex, color-coded spreadsheets, this methodology highlighted by Lloyd's Bank is an absolute lifesaver. You do not need an accounting degree for this. You simply divide your monthly after-tax income into just 3 main buckets: 50% for your needs, 30% for your wants, and 20% for your savings. By zooming out to just 3 simple categories, you completely eliminate the stress of micromanaging every single penny. It's brilliant. Let's look at some hard data to prove that this math actually works for absolutely any income level. If we look at that middle row right there, a £2,000 monthly salary after tax gives you exactly £1,000 for your needs, £600 to spend on your wants, and £400 to put straight into savings. And whether you're bringing in $1,000 or $3,000, the proportions scale perfectly. It creates this beautifully balanced structure between your essentials, your enjoyment today, and planning for your future tomorrow. Okay, Section 3. Needs, wants, and savings. Categorizing your cash. So, the most common hurdle with this framework is figuring out exactly which category your spending actually falls into. Needs, over on the left, are your absolute essentials. We're talking rent or mortgage, basic groceries, and utility bills. Wants, on the right, are things you could realistically survive without. And yes, unfortunately, that does include your daily artisan coffee and all 5 of those streaming subscriptions. Getting radically honest with yourself here is the real secret to making the 50-30-20 rule work. Then we have that final 20%, the savings slice. So how do we actually put that money to work? Well, Lloyd's Bank provides a really logical flow here. First, you prioritize paying off your existing debt to reduce future interest. Next, you build up an emergency fund for a rainy day. And it's really only once those foundations are totally secure that you should move down the list to making contributions to tax-efficient accounts like an ISA, investing in stocks and shares, or saving for those big long-term goals like a mortgage deposit or your pension. Which brings us to Section 4, building your emergency fund, protecting your finances. Drawing on some really solid guidance from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or CFPB, we can define an emergency fund as a dedicated cash reserve set aside strictly for unplanned financial shocks. We are talking about sudden car repairs, unexpected medical bills, or a sudden loss of income. And why is this so absolutely vital? Well, because without this dedicated reserve, even a minor financial shock is going to force you to rely on high-interest credit cards, or worse, drain your hard-earned retirement funds just to stay afloat. Now, you're probably wondering, how much do you actually need in this fund?
Skills You Need highlights this highly memorable target 3 to 6. That represents the 3 to 6 months of living expenses that experts strongly recommend saving. When you have this buffer in place, a minor crisis, like, say, a temporary job loss, doesn't spiral into a major, life-altering disaster like losing your home.
And where exactly should you keep this money? The CFPB outlines a few good options. A dedicated bank or credit union account is generally going to be the safest bet. You could also use a prepaid card or even keep cash at home, though obviously you've got to do that with extreme caution regarding theft or loss. But the overarching goal here is keeping this money safe, highly accessible, but physically separate from your daily checking account. That way, you aren't tempted to spend it on a non-emergency.
Finally, Section 5, Smart Strategies to Save, your actionable playbook.
To actually execute everything we've just learned, we need some solid tactics. So let's start with debt, because it is incredibly hard to save when you're paying massive amounts of interest. This is a highly effective strategy from Skills You Need for achieving that debt-free life. Step 1. Identify the loan or credit card with the absolute highest interest rate. Step 2. Throw everything you can at paying this specific debt off first, while just maintaining the minimums on your others. Then, Step 3. Once that one is cleared, you move your focus straight to the loan with the second highest rate. This systematically minimizes the long-term interest you just hand over to the bank.
Now, once the expensive debt is gone, we need to supercharge our savings. The CFPB offers these brilliant rapid-fire tactics. First, make it automatic. Set up recurring bank transfers so your money moves to savings before you even see it. You can even ask your employer to split your direct deposit so a percentage goes straight to savings right off the bat. Next, capitalize on one-time cash influxes. When you get a tax refund or a cash gift, save it immediately before lifestyle creep has a chance to set in. And finally, if you're ever struggling with cash flow, don't be afraid to call your creditors and ask to adjust your bill due dates so they actually align better with your paychecks.
And here's a really fundamental truth from Skills You Need. If you cannot immediately increase your income, you absolutely must control your cash flow. You do this by reducing spending and simply delaying gratification. If there are 2 non-essential items you really want, prioritize. Buy the most important one this month and literally just delay the second one to the following month's salary. Dividing your expenses over time is exactly how you keep your budget balanced.
So, we've covered the foundations, the 50-30-20 rule, emergency funds, and some really tactical strategies. Now, I want to leave you with one final empowering question. What is the very first step you are going to take today to secure your financial future? You absolutely don't have to do everything all at once, but I challenge you to step out of any financial anxiety you might be feeling right now and apply just one strategy from today's explainer immediately. Automate that transfer, categorize your budget, or just go check your interest rates. You have the playbook. Now it's time to play.